inside a carpenter's home in medieval England, work, family, and life in towns and villages. Have you ever wondered if the walls surrounding your modern life are truly more permanent than those built by hand 6 centuries ago? Do you believe that a man living in the year 1350 possessed a mind less complex, or a heart less burdened than your own? Is it possible that the silence of a pre-industrial night carried a weight of information we have simply forgotten how to decode? What if the wood beneath your feet today is whispering the secrets of an architect who never learned to read a single word? Could a simple oak beam hold more structural integrity and social history than the steel skeletons of our contemporary skyscrapers? You might expect to find a primitive, dark, and chaotic hovel, a place of mere survival where intellect went to die in the mud. You are wrong. What you will find is a masterpiece of precision. A sanctuary of geometry where every joint and peg was a calculated defiance against the collapse of the world. By the time we move through the final timber of this structure, you will no longer see a peasant. You will see a master of the physical realm whose understanding of nature was so profound it borders on the sacred. To enter this space is to leave the noise of the digital age and step into a reality where the scent of fresh sawdust is the smell of progress, and the heat of a central hearth is the only thing standing between a family and the abyss of a York winter. The air inside is thick, not with the sterile dust of a museum, but with the living particles of seasoned oak and the faint, acidic tongue of curing leather. As you stand in the doorway, the transition from the bright, muddy street of the town into the interior is a physical blow of shadow and texture. Your eyes must adjust to the amber glow filtering through horn-covered windows. A light that does not illuminate so much as it sculpts the room. The floor beneath your boots is not cold stone, but a packed composite of earth, straw, and herbs, giving slightly under your weight with a muffled, organic thud. This is the threshold of the carpenter's domain, a place where the forest is systematically dismantled and reborn as shelter. To your left, the massive main post of the house rises like a petrified tree. Its surface scarred by the marks of a broad axe, ripples in the wood that tell the story of 1,000 precise strikes. You can feel the coolness radiating from the timber, a thermal mass that anchors the building to the ground. There is a rhythm here, a slow, tectonic pulse of wood expanding and contracting with the humidity of the English sky. Outside, the world may be governed by kings and plagues, but inside these 4 walls, the carpenter is the ultimate authority over gravity. Every angle is a choice, every mortise a commitment to the future. As you breathe in the smell of wood smoke and damp wool, you begin to realize that this home is not just a residence. It is a complex machine designed for the preservation of a lineage. The stability of the roof depends on the honesty of the craftsman. And in this era, a dishonest joint was a death sentence for the family sleeping beneath it. We are about to peel back the layers of this wooden reality to see how a man of the medieval middle class transformed raw nature into a legacy of stability and craft. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel, because here we delve into the depths of history to rescue the essence of the human experience that textbooks tend to ignore, transforming every detail of the past into a lesson in resilience for your present. The workshop is the true lungs of this house, a space where the heavy, rhythmic thud of the mallet against the chisel creates a heartbeat that can be heard from the muddy lane outside. To understand the geometry of survival, you must look at the carpenter's hands calloused, stained with the tannins of English oak, and mapped with the scars of a lifetime spent negotiating with grain and knot. As you step deeper into this functional sanctuary, the temperature drops slightly, moving away from the radiating heat of the domestic hearth and toward the cool, damp atmosphere required to keep unseasoned timber from checking and splitting too soon. The floor here is buried under a thick, aromatic carpet of curly wood shavings, soft spirals of pale gold that muffle your footsteps and release a fresh, sharp scent of pine and cedar every time they are compressed. Can you feel The vibration of the workbench? It is a massive slab of elm, for inches thick, anchored to the very frame of the building to prevent even the slightest wobble during the delicate process of cutting a dovetail. Here, the tools are not merely objects. They are extensions of the craftsman's nervous system. The brodax, with its offset handle designed to protect the fingers as it skins the bark from a log, hangs on the wall like a silent sentinel of efficiency. There is a specific sound to this room, the high-pitched whistle of a plane shearing off a translucent layer of wood, followed by the deep, hollow thud of a timber being rolled into position on the sawing trestles. You watch as the carpenter's apprentice, perhaps his eldest son, sprinkles water on a sharpening stone, the rhythmic circular motion of the blade against the grit creating a hypnotic, metallic rasp. This is where the physical world is tamed. Every piece of furniture, every structural crock, and every utilitarian bucket begins its life here as a mathematical problem solved through physical labor. The geometry is not written in books, but held in the mind and translated through the plumb line and the chalked string. In a world without standardized measurements, the carpenter's own body is the ruler. A span of the hand, a cubit of the arm, a pace of the foot. This reliance on the self creates a profound connection between the maker and the made. The stability of a village's granary or the lofting of a cathedral's spire depends entirely on this man's ability to see the hidden strength within a crooked branch. As the light shifts, casting long, skeletal shadows of the saws against the timber-framed walls, you realize that the carpenter does not just build houses, he builds the very infrastructure of medieval civilization. Without his mastery of the mortise and tenon, the social order would literally collapse under its own weight. It is a fragile balance, held together by wooden pegs, and the sheer will of a man who knows that nature is always trying to reclaim what he has borrowed. Leaving the aromatic dust of the workshop, you transition into the domestic core of the home, where the sensory landscape shifts from the sharp tongue of fresh timber to the heavy, enveloping atmosphere of the central hearth. The transition is marked by a change in the very air you breathe. It is warmer here, thicker with the carbonized essence of oak logs and the savory, lingering steam of a pottage simmering in a soot-blackened cauldron. There are no hallways or corridors to guide your movement. The house is a living, breathing open space where the architecture dictates the social hierarchy. Above you, the roof is not a flat ceiling, but a cavernous, darkened cathedral of rafters and purlins, stained a deep, oily ebony by generations of rising smoke. This smoke is not merely a byproduct of survival. It is a preservative, a silent guardian that cures the thatch above and keeps the wood-boring beetles at bay, ensuring that the very skeleton of the house remains as hard as iron. You can feel the radiant heat on your skin, a pulsing warmth that draws every member of the family toward the center of the room as the sun begins its descent behind the English hills. The furniture here is sparse, but monumental, each piece a testament to the father's skill and the family's status. A heavy trestle table, scrubbed white with sand and lye, serves as the altar of daily life, where bread is broken and the day's labor is recounted. The benches are smoothed by the friction of wool and linen, polished by decades of human contact until the grain of the wood feels like silk beneath your fingertips. In the corner, a large wooden chest, bound with hand-forged iron straps, holds the family's meager but precious textiles, extra tunics, a cherished blanket of thick, coarse wool, and perhaps a small piece of lace brought from a distant fair. The light in this room is a flickering, umber dance of shadows, provided by rushlights dipped in animal fat that hiss and sputter, casting elongated, grotesque shapes against the daub walls. There is a profound sense of enclosure here, a feeling that the wooden shell of the house is a protective skull, shielding the fragile consciousness of the family from the unpredictable elements of the medieval night. The sounds of the domestic sphere are a rhythmic counterpoint to the workshop's hammers, the rhythmic scrape of a wooden spoon against a ceramic bowl, the soft rustle of straw mattresses being turned, and the low, melodic murmur of a mother teaching her daughter the ancient art of the spindle. Every object you see, the carved bowls, the sturdy stools. The heavy door latches began its life as a raw log in the master's hands, creating a seamless continuity between the forest, the craft, and the home. The intimacy of this space is absolute. There is no privacy in the modern sense, only the shared warmth of collective survival. As you watch the embers glow in the deepening twilight, you realize that the carpenter's home is a sanctuary of order in a chaotic world. A place where the chaotic energy of nature is meticulously organized into comfort. Enjoy this video now if you feel the silent connection to the artisans of the past, whose hands built the foundations of the world we inhabit today, ensuring that their dedication is never forgotten by time. The pulse of the guild is the invisible glue that binds this individual household to the wider tapestry of the medieval town. To walk from the quiet interior of the home into the bustling marketplace is to move from the soul of the craft into its political and economic heart. The carpenter is not an isolated worker. He is a vital cog in a complex machinery of regulation, standards, and mutual protection. You feel the shift in the environment as the narrow streets funnel the sounds of commerce toward you, the clatter of iron-shod wheels on cobblestones, the ringing bells of the parish church, and the loud, competitive cries of merchants. In this world, your identity is defined by your craft, and the guild is the fortress that protects that identity. The guild hall stands as a symbol of collective power, a structure often more ornate than the homes of the masters who built it, showcasing the very height of their architectural ambition. Here, the rules of the trade are enforced with a religious fervor. The quality of the timber, the seasoning of the wood, and the fairness of the price are all scrutinized by the wardens. You begin to understand that the carpenter's stability is not merely a result of his physical labor, but of his social standing. The hierarchy is rigid and clear. The apprentice, bound by years of service and the hope of knowledge. The journeyman, traveling from town to town to refine his skills. And the master, who has proven his worth through a masterpiece that demonstrates total command over the material. This social structure mirrors the very buildings they create, heavy foundations of labor supporting the intricate, soaring heights of status. The economy of the town is a delicate balance of scarcity and abundance. A sudden shortage of seasoned oak due to royal requisition or a forest fire can send shockwaves through the community, halting construction and threatening the livelihoods of dozens. You see the carpenter navigating this world with a calculated grace, bartering his skills for grain, for iron, or for the favor of the local lord. The guild provides a safety net that the individual could never sustain alone, support for widows, burials for the fallen, and a voice in the governance of the town. This is the pulse of the medieval middle class, a rising tide of skilled artisans who are beginning to challenge the old feudal certainties with the sheer power of their expertise. The city walls protect the people from invaders, but the guild protects the craftsman from the volatility of the market and the whims of the elite. As you observe the interactions between the different trades, the blacksmith providing the nails, the tanner providing the bellows, the mason providing the foundations, you see a web of interdependence that is as intricate as the most complex timber frame. The relationship between the carpenter's home and the environment is one of profound, tactile integration. In the medieval English landscape, the house is not a separate entity from the village. It is a manifestation of the local geography, a structure grown from the very soil it stands upon. As you walk along the perimeter of the building, the contrast between timber and stone becomes a visual narrative of the earth's resources. In regions where the limestone is plentiful, the foundations rise high and sturdy, protecting the precious wood from the damp, rot-inducing breath of the English ground. In the wooded heartlands, the timber frame is an exuberant display of abundance, with massive, curved crook blades reaching up like frozen lightning to support the weight of the thatch. The architecture is vernacular, meaning it speaks the language of the wind, the rain, and the sun of this specific coordinate on the map. You notice how the overhanging upper floors, the jetties, reach out over the street, not just to gain space in the crowded town, but to act as a wooden umbrella, shielding the lower Waterland Dob walls from the relentless, driving rain. The walls themselves are a composite of necessity, a lattice of hazel or willow twigs, woven through the timber frame and plastered with a mixture of clay, straw, and animal dung. This material, though humble, create for the house, one that expands with the heat of the hearth and contracts in the winter chill, a living lung that regulates the internal atmosphere. You can touch the surface of the daub and feel the grit of the sand and the fibers of the straw, a texture that connects the inhabitant directly to the agricultural cycles of the village. The windows are small, precious apertures, often located high to trap the rising heat and minimize the entry of the biting northern winds. There is a specific rhythm to the way the village is laid out, with the carpenter's home often situated near the water source or the edge of the commons, where the massive logs can be more easily transported from the forest. The house does not defy the landscape. It honors it. The slope of the roof matches the pitch of the nearby hills, and the orientation of the door is a strategic negotiation with the prevailing winds. In this era, to build was to participate in an ecological dialogue. The carpenter knew which side of the hill grew the densest oak and which valley produced the most flexible ash. He understood the secret life of trees, knowing that a timber felled in the waning moon would resist the rot longer than one taken at the full. This deep, ancestral knowledge is etched into every joint of the house, making the structure a physical map of the environment's offerings and limitations. The seasons in medieval England are not merely a change in the weather. They are a total reconfiguration of the human experience, and for the carpenter, they dictate the very limits of what is possible. In the height of summer, the workshop is a place of frantic, golden activity. The sun stays high in the sky, providing the long hours of natural light necessary for the precision of the adze and the auger. The air is dry, the wood is stable, and the construction of new frames proceeds with a sun-drenched urgency. You see the carpenter and his men raising a massive tie-beam, their muscles strained, their skin slick with sweat and coated in a fine, blonde dust of oak. The movement is a choreographed dance of levers, ropes, and human strength, a collective effort to defy gravity before the autumn rains soften the ground. But as the shadows lengthen, the first frosts begin to silvetch, the rhythm shift to somber, internal gear. The winter is a time of conservation and repair. The light becomes a scarce commodity, a pale, weak gray that barely penetrates the horn windows, forcing the craftsman to move closer to the hearth or to work by the expensive, flickering light of tallow candles. The cold is a physical presence that settles into the brown of the bones and the grain of the wood. Unseasoned timber becomes brittle, tools become painfully cold to the touch, and the pace of work slows to a crawl. This is the time for the small work, the carving of spoons, the mending of tool handles, the planning of next year's great projects. You can feel the tension between the need to produce and the need to survive the biting exhaustion of the short, dark days. The house becomes a fortress of heat, with the family huddling closer together, the smoke from the fire thicker as they burn whatever damp wood they can forage. The contrast between the seasons is a masterclass in human resilience. The abundance of the harvest and the frantic building of the summer are the only things that provide the security to harden the scarcity of the winter. Every seasoned plank in the workshop represents a day of summer labor stored for a winter need. The carpenter's life is a constant calibration against these cycles, a recognition that he is not the master of time, but his servant. The very structure of the home, with its thick walls and heavy thatch, is a thermal bank, designed to hold the memory of the summer's warmth against the relentless siege of the ice. To live in this house is to be acutely aware of the tilt of the earth and the movement of the stars. For they are the ultimate rulers of the carpenter's trade. The foundations of faith are as integral to the carpenter's home as the stone footings beneath the main posts. In the medieval mind, there is no separation between the secular and the sacred. The act of building is an act of devotion, and the church is the ultimate patron and architect of the aesthetic world. You see this influence in the subtle details of the home, the way a chamfer on a beam mimics the molding of a cathedral's arch, or the way a decorative boss on the ceiling reflects a theological motif. The church is the keeper of the calendar, its bells marking the hours of the carpenter's labor and the days of rest that punctuate the grueling year. The liturgy of the seasons provides the spiritual framework that mirrors the physical cycles of the wood. When the carpenter works on a commission for the local parish, perhaps a new rood screen or a set of choir stalls, he is not just working for pay. He is working for his soul, carving his prayers into the very grain of the oak. This connection to the divine elevates the craft from mere survival to a form of worship. You can feel the weight of this responsibility in the precision of the work. To fail in a joint for a neighbor's house was a social shame, but to fail in a work for the Creator was a spiritual danger. This belief system provides a profound sense of purpose and stability to the family. The presence of a small, carved crucifix over the door or a holy water stoup near the hearth is a reminder that the house is a protected space, a microcosm of the ordered universe that the church describes. The aesthetics of the home, the preference for verticality, the love of intricate, interlacing patterns, the symbolic use of light are all echoes of the great Gothic cathedrals that dominate the skyline. The carpenter is the bridge between these two worlds, translating the celestial geometry of the heavens into the terrestrial reality of the domestic dwelling. Even the most utilitarian objects, like a simple stool, my small, calved quata fo assaillant node to the Trinity. This saturation of faith ensures that the carpenter never feels like a mere laborer. He is a subcreator, a man endowed by God with the ability to bring order out of the chaos of the forest. As the evening bell tolls across the village, calling the faithful to prayer, you see the carpenter lay down his tools and cross himself, a gesture that bridges the gap between the physical dust of the workshop and the eternal aspirations of the spirit. The fragile security of the medieval carpenter is a shadow that follows every beam he sets and every peg he drives. To look at these massive oak frames today, we see an image of indestructible permanence, but for the man living within them, life was a delicate negotiation between the stability he built and the chaos that constantly threatened to undo it. You can feel this tension in the very layout of the home. Why are the walls so thick? And why is the hearth never left unattended? Because in a world built of wood, straw, and pitch, fire is a hungry god that can turn a lifetime of labor into gray ash in a matter of minutes. The carpenter lives in a state of constant sensory vigilance. He listens for the snap of a spark on the dry thatch. He smells for the acrid warning of a smoldering beam hidden behind the plaster. This is the contrast between abundance and scarcity that defines its existence. On the workbench, there may be an abundance of skill and the raw materials of the forest. But in the larder, there is the lingering fear of a failed harvest or a royal tax that strips the surplus away. The security of the guild and the protection of the town walls are psychological bastions against the terrifying randomness of the outside world, the sudden fever that takes a child, the shift in trade routes that devalues a year's worth of crafted furniture, or the slow, creeping rot that can hollow out a foundation post without a sound. You observe the carpenter inspecting his own home with a critical, almost anxious eye, looking for the slight tilt in a doorframe that signals the ground is shifting beneath the stone footings. This is the burden of the builder. He knows exactly how things fall apart. He understands the limits of his materials. He knows that the oak, though strong, is organic and mortal, susceptible to the same forces of decay that govern the human body. This awareness creates a profound sense of presence. Every night spent safely under a dry roof is a victory. Every meal shared around the heavy trestle table is a defiance of the hunger that haunts the edges of the village. The stability of the house is a physical manifestation of the carpenter's willpower, a temporary bubble of order carved out of the entropic wild. As the wind howls through the narrow streets, rattling the wooden shutters and testing the strength of the joints, the family finds comfort not in the luxury of their belongings, but in the integrity of the structures that surround them. They understand that safety is not a right, but a precarious achievement maintained through constant maintenance and ancestral knowledge. This fragility does not lead to despair. It leads to a deeper appreciation for the concrete, for the heavy, the solid, and the well-made. In a world where everything is fleeting, the carpenter's work is an anchor, a tangible proof that man can impose his logic upon the landscape, even if only for a few generations. The echoes of the adze are the whispers of a lost language, a dialect of strokes and angles that bridge the gap between the living tree and the historical monument. As you stand in the center of the carpenter's home, you begin to perceive the house not as a finished object, but as a continuous process of transmission. Every technique you see the secret geometry of the scarf joint, the precise tapering of the rafters, the way the grain is oriented to repel moisture is a piece of data passed down through centuries of trial, error, and epiphany. The carpenter is a vessel for this collective memory. He does not invent a house. He remembers it. He breathes life into the blueprints stored in the muscular memory of his forearms and the calluses of his palms. This is the legacy of the craft, a form of immortality that does not require a name carved in stone, but a technique etched into the fabric of the community. You can see the transmission of knowledge in real time as the master guides the apprentice's hand, correcting the angle of the chisel by a fraction of a degree. It is a silent, tactile education where the truth of the work is found in the fit of the wood. There is a profound dignity in this anonymity. The man who built this house will be forgotten by history, but the way he solved the problem of tee-hee roofs, weight will be copied by his grandson, and his grandson's grandson, forming an unbroken chain of human ingenuity. This is the mark of the human on the mat of the transformation of the wild, chaotic energy of the forest into the rhythmic, predictable patterns of civilization. The adze marks on the beams are his signature, a series of rhythmic ridges that capture a specific moment of physical exertion and mental focus. These marks are a reminder that the medieval world was not a place of gray, faceless masses, but a collection of individuals with distinct styles, preferences, and pride. The carpenter's legacy is functional. It is measured in the centuries, that the roof stays level and the walls stay plumb. It is a legacy of service to the future. As you touch the wood, you are touching the intention of a man who cared about the experience of people he would never meet, the descendants who would sleep under his beams and the strangers who would find shelter within his walls. This realization elevates the sensory experience of the house into a philosophical meditation on the nature of work. What does it mean to build something that lasts longer than your own name? It means to participate in the divine architecture of the world, to contribute a single, perfect note to the long symphony of human survival. The house becomes a testament to the fact that excellence is its own reward, and that a life spent in the pursuit of a craft is a life that resonates far beyond its biological limits. Inside a carpenter's home in medieval England, work, family, and life in towns and villages. We have moved through the dust, the smoke, and the geometry of a world that feels both impossibly distant and hauntingly familiar. What we have found is not a primitive past, but a sophisticated reality of wood and will. The carpenter's home is more than a shelter. It is a philosophy rendered in oak. It tells us that beauty is found in utility, that security is the fruit of discipline, and that the most profound human achievements are often the most silent. We see now that the distinction between the worker and the intellectual is a modern fiction. The medieval craftsman was both, a man who thought with his hands and felt with his mind. As the final light of the English day fades from the workshop, leaving only the scent of sawdust and the cooling embers of the hearth, we are left with a deeper understanding of our own foundations. We are the inheritors of this resilience. The structures we inhabit today, however sterile or advanced they may seem, are the direct descendants of the timber frames raised by men who understood that the quality of a joint was a moral obligation. The life of the carpenter reminds us that to build is to hope, to plan for a future that we may not inhabit but that we are responsible for creating. The stability of the medieval town, the growth of the guilds, and the eventual rise of the modern world all began with the stroke of an axe and the vision of a man who saw a house where others saw only a forest. This is the ultimate elevation of the narrative, from the concrete grain of the wood to the abstract spirit of human progress. We leave the carpenter's home not with a sense of pity for their hardships, but with a profound respect for their mastery. They did not just survive the Middle Ages, they framed them. They gave shape to the chaos and meaning to the material. As you step back out into the modern world, carry with you the weight of the oak and the precision of the square. Remember that every wall you see was once a choice, and every roof was once a promise of protection. The echoes of the mallet and the scent of the shavings are still there, if you know how to listen and how to breathe. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel to continue exploring the hidden layers of our history, as your presence here is what allows us to keep alive the flame of knowledge and appreciation of the arts that built the world. If you've watched this far, it's because you like this case. Leave a comment saying I've watched this far, so I can get to know you and know who really likes the stories here on the channel. Like this video to support the production of independent documentaries that seek the truth in the forgotten details of the past. Share this journey with those who seek to understand the roots of our civilization and the power of human work through the centuries.